The billionaire's awkward dinner, Amante on one arm, ex-wife and CEO on the other, hook. Amelia Sterling thought her tumultuous divorce from Alexander Vance was the end of all the suffering she'd endured. The gut-wrenching betrayal, the shame of being the center of gossip in her exclusive social circle, and the pain of seeing her ex-husband flaunting his lavish new life with a seductive lover by his side. Now, months later, a chance encounter in the gleaming lobby of a five-star restaurant is about to shake everything they thought was over. Because on the very night Alexander struts in with his lover on his arm, he finds Amelia laughing across the room with a powerful CEO. Sparks will fly, old wounds will rip open, and shocking secrets are about to spill. If you've ever had a run-in with an ex that turned into a scene, hit that like button. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single moment of this dramatic tale. Leave a comment below. What do you think will happen when these two couples collide? The gilded cage and a fading love. Amelia Hayes had been raised with all the right manners, attended the best schools, and held the expectation of living a fairy tale life. Her parents, Robert and Rebecca Hayes, had built a comfortable existence in an affluent part of Connecticut, ensuring Amelia never lacked anything. Ironically, it was that same privileged environment that led her to cross paths with Alexander Vance, a charming and ambitious man of modest origins, determined to climb socially and financially. They met at a charity gala at the Yale Club in Manhattan, amidst chandeliers and champagne flutes. Alexander was then a rising entrepreneur, brimming with energy and determination. The spark was instant. Amelia found his drive refreshing, very different from the arrogant attitudes she was accustomed to. He, in turn, admired her elegance and her connections in the exclusive world. They were an improbable couple, but for a few sweet years, it seemed they were building a true partnership. However, success can be a double-edged sword. Alexander's tech startup soared beyond his most ambitious dreams, making him a rising star among venture capitalists. Soon, he became a millionaire, rubbing shoulders with celebrities and moguls, always looking to close the next big deal. As his fortune grew, so did the pressures and temptations. Amelia couldn't pinpoint the exact moment their marriage began to crack, but it started with late-night meetings that stretched into weekends. Over time, Alexander's warm gaze towards her turned into distant courtesy. When rumors of infidelity first reached Amelia's ears, she dismissed them as mere gossip. She wanted to believe that Alexander was still the same man who sent her silly texts from across the room just to tell her he loved her. But by their 4th anniversary, she could no longer deny the changes in him. Friends whispered about a mysterious woman seen in Alexander's luxury car, or exaggeratedly sexy heels found in his penthouse office. Every day, the feeling of betrayal grew deeper. A year ago, after tearful confrontations and painful revelations, they finally divorced. The legal battle was brief. Alexander offered a substantial financial settlement, as if money could cleanse his guilt. Bitter and heartbroken, Amelia retreated for a time to her parents' estate, licking her wounds in privacy. The tabloids echoed the divorce, portraying it as just another broken fairy tale. In the following months, Alexander seemed to relish his bachelor status, photographed by paparazzi in exclusive clubs, almost always with a stunning brunette on his arm. Her name, it was later revealed, was Gabrielle Stone, a budding model from a small town, eager to taste the good life. She clung to him in paparazzi photos, with sensual expressions that contrasted sharply with Amelia's more refined style. Amelia tried to ignore the whirlwind of rumors about how happy Alexander was. Instead, she focused on rebuilding her life. She found a new job as a philanthropic event coordinator for a major NGO and threw herself into charitable work. In those volunteer circles, she found a purpose that mitigated the pain of her broken marriage. Still, no matter how many philanthropic triumphs or supportive friendships she gained, she couldn't completely erase the wound. In moments of silence, she remembered how she and Alexander used to dream of traveling the world together, starting a family, and launching their own charitable projects. Now, all that remained were a string of regrets and a white gold ring gathering dust in her jewelry box. A new connection and a fateful night. It was during one of those philanthropic events that she crossed paths with Marcus Thorne, a handsome, self-made CEO, owner of an international chain of luxury hotels. Amelia was organizing a large fundraiser for an educational foundation, and Marcus's conglomerate had promised a generous donation. After weeks of collaboration, Marcus proved to be much more than a distant businessman. He was surprisingly accessible, with a kind smile that lit up his hazel eyes. Although Amelia distrusted rich and dominant men after her experience with Alexander, Marcus's respectful attention slowly disarmed her. One night, after a successful charity gala, Marcus invited her to dinner. She hesitated, feeling that familiar knot of vulnerability. But there was something in Marcus's sincerity that made her accept. She promised herself to keep it casual, just two professionals celebrating a job well done. She had no idea that this dinner would be the setting for a dramatic reunion, nor did she suspect that her ex-husband and his lover would be dining in that very restaurant, setting the stage for a collision none of the three could have anticipated. Luxury restaurants in Manhattan often boast opulent decor, but the Premier took luxury to another level. The place was famous for its gold leaf ceiling, hand-blown crystal chandeliers, and a waiting list that could extend for months. Diners shelled out thousands of dollars for a single meal, savoring artistic dishes prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. Alexander Vance entered with Gabrielle Stone on his arm. He was accustomed to drawing stares in such environments, and that night was no exception. Dressed in an impeccable Italian suit, he exuded the confidence of a man who had conquered the business world. The hostess, recognizing him as a VIP client, led them to an exclusive table by the panoramic window overlooking Central Park. Alexander felt a surge of pride as he noticed how other diners observed them, a palpable reminder of his success. Gabrielle, clad in a sleek black dress, sipped a glass of champagne, casting an adoring glance at Alexander, fully aware that half the restaurant was watching them. This was exactly the glamorous life she had always longed for. Caviar, champagne, and a wealthy partner who showered her with lavish gifts. She enjoyed every second, from the maître's whispered tone when addressing them to the discreet presence of paparazzi lurking at the entrance. As they perused the menu and talked about their upcoming trip to St. Barthélemy, Gabrielle turned her phone to take a discreet selfie. Alexander gently took her hand, warning her to keep a low profile. Although he enjoyed success, he preferred to manage his public image cautiously, especially after the fiasco of his scandalous divorce. Gabrielle pouted, but complied. She knew the real prize was remaining part of Alexander's world, not a fleeting viral post. Meanwhile, across the restaurant, tension began to brew. The hostess was guiding Marcus Thorne and Amelia Hayes towards an equally exclusive table. Marcus, possessing a serene confidence forged through hard work, wore a perfectly tailored navy suit. Amelia glided beside him in a deep blue dress that highlighted her figure without being ostentatious. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Marcus was not only a committed ally in philanthropic matters, but also a man she found increasingly intriguing. The table Marcus had reserved was in the center of the dining room, giving them an unobstructed view of the lush surroundings. The soft candlelight danced on the polished silverware as they settled in. Amelia clasped her hands in her lap, determined to remain composed. She sensed that Marcus's invitation might go beyond a casual dinner, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for anything deeper. The conversation began with light jokes about the successful charity gala, then drifted to Marcus's expansion plans in Asia. Amelia offered ideas about philanthropic work in those regions, her eyes shining as she described possible alliances. Marcus found her passion contagious. It was a refreshing change from the self-serving people he usually encountered on his way to the top. Midway through the appetizers, Marcus raised his glass. "To you, Amelia," he said, "for reminding me that business can mean much more than profits. You've made me see how much good we can do for education worldwide." Amelia's cheeks flushed. "You give me too much credit, Marcus. I just help connect the right donors with the right causes," Amelia said, as their glasses gently clinked. For an instant, their gazes met, a silent acknowledgement that something deeper united them than mere professional synergy. Amelia felt a flutter in her chest, a sensation she hadn't experienced since long before her divorce. Perhaps, after all, she was ready to explore new possibilities. On the opposite side of the restaurant, however, the tension was starting to brew. Gabrielle, with the trained cunning of a social climber, scanned the room. Suddenly she tensed. She thought she recognized someone. "Is that your ex-wife?" she murmured to Alexander, leaning towards him. "The one by the central arrangement." Alexander's gaze followed Gabrielle's indication. Upon seeing Amelia's familiar profile, elegantly seated next to a man he instantly recognized as Marcus Thorne, the powerful hotel magnate, a wave of surprise washed over him. The ex-wife he had so coldly discarded was there, dressed for a gala, smiling warmly at a man who vastly surpassed him in fortune. An unexpected pang of jealousy twisted in his chest, followed by a mixture of anger and intrigue. Trying to hide his emotions, Alexander forced a laugh. "What a small world," he said, though his voice sounded tense even to him. This wasn't just any coffee shop or trendy bistro. The Premiere was a fortress of exclusivity. Those dining there were the absolute elite, and the last person he wanted to see was Amelia, especially not in the company of someone as influential and wealthy as Marcus Thorne. Gabrielle raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a feline smile curving her lips. "Perhaps we should say hello," she suggested, her tone laced with false innocence. "It's always polite to greet an ex-wife and her companion." Alexander quickly finished his champagne. "We'll see," he muttered, as he cast another uncomfortable glance towards Amelia's table. If there was one thing he hated, it was feeling outshone, and Marcus Thorne's presence threatened precisely that. Part of him wanted to walk over and reassert his social territory, but he knew any confrontation could quickly escalate. As waiters paraded sumptuous plates of black cod and lobster risotto, two separate tables, unknowingly, prepared for an imminent collision. Amelia had no idea Alexander was there, just steps away, feeling the sting of jealousy. Marcus, for his part, remained oblivious to the fact that the CEO of a rising tech company and Amelia's ex-husband was watching them from afar. Within minutes, that carefully curated world of fine dining and elegant appearances was about to plunge into a whirlwind of old resentments and new temptations. The night was just beginning, and sparks were about to fly in ways none of them could have foreseen. What do you think will happen when Alexander and Gabrielle approach Amelia and Marcus's table? Will it be civil, or will old wounds lead to a dramatic confrontation? Share your predictions in the comments. The clash of worlds. Truth and tension. Alexander's entire body was tense. He kept glancing towards Amelia's table, trying to gauge the level of intimacy between her and Marcus Thorne. Gabrielle, always ready to fan the flames of drama, occasionally whispered comments in Alexander's ear. "They look quite cozy, don't they?" Or, "I'm sure he's paying for all those diamonds she's wearing," she said, alluding to the delicate diamond earrings that, ironically, had been a gift from Alexander. Her venomous comments made Alexander's jaw clench even tighter. Part of him wanted to think that the jealousy was irrational. After all, hadn't he been the one who ended everything and moved on with Gabrielle? And yet, seeing Amelia, radiant under the Premier's golden light, more self-assured than ever, sitting next to a man with as much or more power and wealth than him, awakened a sense of possessiveness he didn't expect. Finally, after picking at his caviar-adorned appetizer, Alexander decided he couldn't sit there any longer. He stood up, ignoring Gabrielle's poorly disguised triumphant smile. "I'm going to say hello," he announced, trying to sound casual. "I'd like things to remain civil." Gabrielle's red lips curved with amusement. "Have fun," she said, swirling her wine glass. "I'll be here waiting." A spiral of tension coiled in Alexander's chest as he walked across the tables, trying not to look like a man on a mission. His steps grew heavier as he approached the center of the dining room. In a matter of seconds, he found himself by Marcus and Amelia's table. Up close, the scene looked even more intimate than it had from afar. Marcus was leaning slightly towards her as Amelia described something that made her eyes shine with enthusiasm. "Alexander," he cleared his throat. Amelia's gaze immediately lifted. As soon as she recognized him, her expression shifted from surprise to composure, the mask of courtesy slipping effortlessly onto her face. "Alexander," she said, inclining her head slightly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Marcus Thorne, who was in the middle of a laugh, fell silent. His hazel eyes gleamed with curiosity as he assessed the newcomer. He had heard rumors that Amelia's divorce had involved a wealthy tech entrepreneur, but he had never personally met Alexander Vance. With a polite gesture, Marcus extended his hand. "Good evening. I'm Marcus Thorne." Alexander shook his hand, noting the firm grip that spoke of confidence. "Alexander Vance, I believe we've heard of each other around town," Alexander said, his tone amicable, though inside his thoughts boiled. "This is the man who has replaced me in Amelia's life." Amelia remained calm. "How have you been, Alexander?" she asked, with the sincere intention that the encounter would not turn unpleasant. She had hoped her ex-husband wouldn't approach, but she knew some kind of confrontation was inevitable. Alexander forced a smile. "Busy, as always, expanding the business. I see you two are also enjoying a nice evening," he added, gesturing to the luxurious restaurant, as if wanting to highlight the opulence he knew so well. Marcus nodded, not missing Alexander's slightly sharp tone. "Yes, we're celebrating an important achievement in our charitable work. Amelia was key in raising funds for new educational initiatives." Alexander's lips tightened. He remembered the time when he and Amelia did philanthropic work together, but that was before his empire grew so large that there was no longer time for genuine giving. "How nice," he said, without much enthusiasm. Amelia caught the flicker of resentment in Alexander's eyes. He recognized it. It was the same one that appeared in the last months of their marriage, that silent anger that flared when he felt overshadowed or displaced. She tried to maintain a cordial facade, preparing for him to say something hurtful. The last thing she wanted was a spectacle in front of Marcus or the curious eyes of the elite present. At that moment, Gabrielle appeared behind Alexander, linking her arm in his. She smiled sweetly, though her eyes sparkled mischievously. "Hello," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand towards Marcus. "I'm Gabrielle Stone, Alexander's partner." The emphasis on partner did not go unnoticed by Amelia. Gabrielle turned to her with a slight mocking smile. "And you must be the ex-wife. A pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you." Amelia remained serene, though her stomach churned with unease. She recognized Gabrielle from photos in celebrity magazines. Stylized, provocative, the polar opposite of Amelia's classic sophistication. "Charmed," she said, forcing herself to maintain politeness. Marcus observed the tension with a slight frown. He placed a hand on Amelia's back, a gesture of support that did not go unnoticed by Alexander. "Now that we've all introduced ourselves," Marcus said, trying to diffuse the atmosphere, "why don't you sit with us for a moment? It's not every day one meets acquaintances at the premiere." Amelia almost choked on the word acquaintances, but managed to maintain a pleasant expression. Alexander, seeing an opportunity to regain control of the situation, immediately accepted. Gabrielle cast Amelia a triumphant glance, as if she had been invited to a personal ring where she could show off her dominance over Alexander. With some reluctance, Amelia pulled out her chair to make space, feeling her heart pound in her chest. Marcus gestured to a waiter to bring additional chairs, unaware that he had just opened the door to an emotional whirlwind no one was prepared to face. As they rearranged the space, the luxurious atmosphere became stifling. The mirrors reflected a quartet, joined by tangled threads of love, betrayal, and new desires. The staff, sensing the tension, discreetly retreated. The next words exchanged at that table would define their futures in ways they could not yet imagine. A gilded cage of words. With the four gathered around a candlelit table, the premier's opulence felt like a golden cage. Amelia sat rigidly, wishing she were anywhere else. However, seeing Marcus's cordial smile and how he ordered new glasses of wine, she understood there was no graceful exit. Abruptly leaving would only fuel gossip. Gabrielle wasted no time. She leaned forward, blinking exaggeratedly. "This place is absolutely dazzling," she said, as if reciting a script. "Alexander and I come here often, don't we, darling?" Alexander nodded reluctantly, visibly distracted. He kept looking at Marcus, evaluating him, his suit, his presence, even his gestures. His heart pounded with the raw, surprising jealousy he felt seeing Marcus's protective attitude towards Amelia. Trying to salvage some cordiality, Marcus cleared his throat. "I hear the chef is preparing a new tasting menu. Perhaps we should try it someday," he said, directing the comment more to Amelia than to the others. Amelia nodded, forcing a smile. She noticed how Gabrielle studied Marcus's watch, an exquisite Swiss piece that cost more than many people's annual salaries. She felt a twist of annoyance. She's probably evaluating him just like she evaluated Alexander, Amelia thought. And that realization sparked a flicker of empathy towards her ex-husband. Had Gabrielle latched on to him just when he started to shine? But was that empathy enough to erase all the past pain? Hardly. Gabrielle took a delicate sip of champagne. Marcus began, feigning casual interest. "It's Marcus Thorne, right? CEO of the Thorne Hotel Group." Marcus nodded, his lips barely tightening. "That's right. And you must be forging an interesting career in the modeling world, right?" Gabrielle's eyelashes fluttered. "Oh, well, I do some print ads now and then, but I'm mostly dedicated to philanthropic causes with Alexander," Gabrielle said, pausing for her words to sink in, just like Amelia used to do with him. The jab was subtle, but the message was clear. "Amelia, you're a thing of the past. I've taken your place." Amelia's cheeks burned, but she maintained her composure. She refused to stoop to petty comments, though her stomach churned with rage. Marcus gave her a gentle touch on her hand under the table, a gesture of support she valued more than words could express. Alexander, however, noticed the gesture, and his eyes lit up with something akin to regret. Had he really pushed away someone who truly cared for him, for a woman who seemed captivated by status and money? He decided to change the subject. "So, Marcus, I understand you're expanding into Southeast Asia soon. That must be a huge undertaking." Marcus responded with professional ease, describing his new hotels in Singapore and Hong Kong, the philanthropic programs his company sponsored for local communities, and the complexities of working across different cultures. Amelia interjected, referencing her experience organizing events for an educational NGO in those regions. The synergy between them was evident, and a natural camaraderie shone between them. Hearing Amelia speak with such passion and knowledge stirred a strange pain in Alexander's chest. She had always been brilliant and determined, qualities that attracted him from the beginning. He remembered how, in the early years of their marriage, her philanthropic enthusiasm seemed almost more captivating than her beauty. But success had changed him, and he suspected her too, though in different ways. Gabrielle, sensing Alexander's distraction, placed a perfectly manicured hand on his arm, smiling. "Alexander has also been traveling a lot, hasn't he, love? He's looking for new offices in Dubai," she said, casting a quick glance at Marcus's watch and then at his face, trying to gauge if he was impressed. Alexander forced a smile, reluctant to show vulnerability. "Yes, Dubai. We have major investors there," he commented, throwing out a few phrases about global expansions, though without his usual sparkle. The conversation stalled. The tension grew thicker in the air. Then, unexpectedly, a man approached the table. It was the maître, accompanied by a staff member who whispered something about a commotion with paparazzi outside. The maître apologized softly, explaining that some familiar faces in the restaurant that night had attracted media attention. "Would you like us to move you to a private room?" he asked courteously, looking at both Marcus Thorne and Alexander Vance. "We want to ensure your privacy and that of your companions." Amelia's pulse quickened. She knew any photo of the four of them together could unleash a tabloid frenzy. Marcus looked at her, sensing her concern. "We would appreciate that," he replied. They stood up, and the staff led them down a side corridor to a more luxurious private room, covered by velvet curtains. A grand piano rested untouched in a corner, while soft jazz notes flowed from hidden speakers. The light was dimmer, intimate, accentuating a sense of claustrophobia. Gabrielle settled onto a velvet divan, crossing her legs elegantly, clearly delighted with this VIP detour. Alexander remained by her side, but cast constant glances towards Amelia and Marcus, who had sat on a nearby divan. The staff offered fresh champagne. No one refused. Each sip seemed to sharpen the latent tension circulating among them. "This is quite unexpected." Marcus broke the silence with a wry half-smile, looking at Amelia. She slightly shrugged. She wanted to disappear among the sofa cushions, but she also felt a quiet determination not to be intimidated by Alexander or his companion. Gabrielle, of course, decided to fan the flames. "I recall reading something about your divorce settlement, Amelia. Very discreet, but those things always leak, don't they?" Gabrielle said, addressing Marcus as if inviting him to speculate. Amelia tensed, rage boiling beneath her serene exterior. Marcus frowned. "That's personal, Ms. Stone," he said firmly. "I'm sure none of us want to delve into gossip." Gabrielle's lips curved into a slow, feline smile. "Of course, my apologies." The apology sounded hollow. Alexander felt a pang of guilt. Had he really let someone so petty and superficial into his life? However, his pride wouldn't allow him to reject her in front of Marcus and Amelia, at least not yet. so he diverted the topic once more. "Marcus, how do you manage to balance your personal life with a global empire?" Marcus responded courteously, explaining how he delegated tasks, stayed in touch with philanthropic boards, and made sure to set aside personal time. Amelia listened, recalling again the synergy between them: philanthropy, business, a sense of purpose. She cast a fleeting glance at Alexander, remembering how, at another time, they shared the dream of building success with social impact. Now, that dream was in tatters, replaced by this strange spectacle of veiled competition. The intimacy of the private room offered no escape from the tangled emotions. Everyone sipped their champagne, silently grappling with regrets, insecurities, or anger. And somewhere outside, cameras flashed, capturing fragments of the night's drama that the tabloids would soon distort at will. The weight of regret and a graceful exit. Inside the private room, the tension had crystallized. Gabrielle, determined not to be outshone, began to bombard Marcus with questions about his philanthropic efforts. She tried to align herself with him, making vague claims about her own interest in charitable causes, though she stumbled over details, and no one bothered to probe further. Alexander, beside her, couldn't help but notice how forced that conversation seemed, especially compared to the authentic passion Amelia and Marcus shared for those topics. Finally, Marcus stood up, bowing slightly. "I need to speak with the matron about our privacy," he explained. "Amelia, would you mind joining me?" He wanted to offer her an escape, a respite from that stifling atmosphere. She accepted, and they both left together, leaving Alexander and Gabrielle alone for a moment on the velvet divan. The silence between them was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Gabrielle fiddled with her phone, as if considering taking a selfie to immortalize her glamorous surroundings. Alexander's thoughts spiraled, laden with regrets. He didn't want to be with a woman who only saw him as a wallet and a stepping stone to fame. But part of him had chosen that path, attracted by superficial glitter just as his marriage crumbled. Impulsively, he reached for Gabrielle's phone, lowering it. "No more photos," he murmured. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face, but she obeyed. "I just wanted a quick one." "I said enough." Alexander's voice had an edge that surprised even himself. He exhaled, trying to calm down. "Sorry, it's just that this is complicated." Gabrielle turned her body towards him, gently touching his arm. "Seeing Amelia with that CEO is affecting you?" she asked softly. He shifted uncomfortably, but Gabrielle insisted. "Look, I get it. Exes can stir up emotions, especially if they're doing better than one expected. But remember, you've also been successful. I'm by your side. Don't let an old flame overshadow what we have." Her words, though meant to reassure him, only added more confusion to his mind. Alexander wasn't sure what he had with Gabrielle. She liked parties, trips, lavish gifts. But did she care about him? The man behind the money? He remembered Amelia's unwavering support in the early days of his startup, how she believed in him long before the world did. A wave of nostalgia washed over him, almost drowning him. He gently pulled Gabrielle's hand away. "Let's not talk about that now. They'll be back soon." Alexander forced a half smile, but his eyes betrayed his inner conflict. Gabrielle, who wouldn't tolerate threats to her territory, hid her frustration behind a facade of apparent serenity. Across the room, Marcus and Amelia spoke with the maître. While Marcus took care of the logistical details, Amelia's eyes often returned to the divan, uneasy about leaving Alexander and Gabrielle alone. She feared Gabrielle might provoke a scene. Marcus noticed her discomfort. "Everything okay?" Amelia managed a tense smile. "I'm fine. Just didn't expect to have dinner tonight with my ex-husband and his lover. Marcus nodded with understanding. It's a lot to handle. If you want, we can leave. I'm sure I can arrange a discreet exit. Amelia considered it. She wanted to escape, but something inside her also longed to close that chapter. Perhaps facing Alexander and Gabrielle was a necessary step towards healing. Let's finish this with elegance, she decided. We can say goodbye and leave. Marcus admired her composure. You're braver than you think, he murmured. She felt a warm pang at that subtle compliment. They returned to the table, where Alexander had adopted a rigid posture next to Gabrielle. The tension still hung in the air like a static charge. Amelia cleared her throat. I think Marcus and I will be leaving soon. We have an early event tomorrow. Alexander nodded, feeling a mix of relief and a strange disappointment. Gabrielle pouted as she examined Amelia's dress. What a shame. The night is young. Are you sure you don't want to stay and catch up? Her tone dripped with sarcasm, clearly enjoying the attempt to make Amelia uncomfortable. Marcus intervened elegantly. Amelia's philanthropic agenda keeps her quite busy. We wouldn't want to abuse anyone's time. He turned to Alexander, offering his hand. It was interesting meeting you. I wish you the best with your expansion projects. Alexander responded with a polite gesture. Likewise, perhaps we'll cross paths again. The words sounded hollow, but he made an effort to maintain his dignity. Amelia, not trusting herself to speak without her voice trembling, simply offered Gabrielle a cold smile. Enjoy the rest of your evening, she said, controlling her expression. Gabrielle replied with a sickly sweet smile. Oh, we will. With that, Marcus gently placed a hand on Amelia's back, guiding her through the velvet curtains of the private room. A staff member led them to a discreet exit, away from the paparazzi. As they entered the elevator, Amelia let out a trembling sigh. Marcus observed her in profile. You're handling all this with admirable grace. I know it's not easy. She gave him an ironic smile. Thanks for intervening. If you hadn't been there, I might have lost my composure. Silent gratitude passed between the two, a feeling that Marcus was more than a philanthropic partner or a dinner date. He could be a silent ally on her path to healing. Meanwhile, in the dining room, Alexander signaled for staff to bring him a strong drink. Gabrielle rubbed his shoulder, in what she interpreted as a gesture of comfort. Alexander looked at the empty hallway, where Amelia had disappeared, with a whirlwind in his chest. Jealousy, regret, and a strange, protective nostalgia. Gabrielle, sensing his mood, whispered, Don't think about your ex anymore. We have a flight to San Bartolomé soon, remember? Let's focus on us. Alexander averted his gaze from the curtains, forcing another smile. Yes, on us. But in the back of his mind, Amelia's serene face haunted him. He had counted on her support, her love. Now she was forging a new path, beside a man who seemed to value every part of her. The feeling of loss gnawed at him, a painful reminder of the cracks he himself had allowed to form in what was once a promising marriage. As the soft jazz music resumed in the dining room, two different couples dealt with unspoken truths, one left behind the gleaming walls, venturing into a city full of infinite possibilities. The other remained anchored to the illusions of a glamorous life, but with the growing suspicion that it no longer shone as brightly as before. The tension was palpable. What do you think Alexander will do after seeing Amelia with Marcus? Will he try to win her back, or focus on his own redemption? Share your predictions in the comments. Media frenzy and a gnawing regret. The tabloids quickly ignited speculation about the unusual dinner for four at the premiere. The next morning, social media buzzed with photos of Marcus Thorne escorting Amelia Hayes through a side exit, while Alexander Vance and Gabrielle Stone remained behind. Various media outlets spun their own versions. Millionaire tech entrepreneur's awkward reunion with ex-wife and hotel magnate, or Gabrielle Stone's icy glare, jealous of CEOs flirting with Mrs. Hayes. Amelia woke up to an avalanche of messages from friends, some offering support, others seeking gossip. She responded politely, simply saying it was a coincidence and that everyone remained cordial. But deep down, she could still feel the tension vibrating. After making herself a cup of coffee, Amelia scanned the headlines on her phone, promising herself not to let the media circus drag her back into pain. That day, she had a meeting scheduled with Marcus at his corporate office to finalize a philanthropic alliance. As she passed the hallway mirror, she adjusted a rebellious strand of hair behind her ear. She swore to maintain her composure. The emotional entanglement of the previous night would not eclipse her professional goals. An hour later, she arrived at the Thorn International Tower, a gleaming skyscraper symbolizing Marcus's empire. The executive reception area featured polished marble floors and minimalist artwork. A personal assistant led her to Marcus's private meeting room. Amelia expected a formal atmosphere, but he greeted her with a warm smile. "Thanks for coming, Amelia. Please, have a seat." They discussed the planned scholarship fund, the distribution of resources, and the timeline for official announcements. Although the topic was strictly business, an undertone of personal concern floated in the air. Eventually, Marcus addressed the issue. "How are you feeling after last night? I hope the press hasn't overwhelmed you." Amelia sighed. "Tabloids love to invent stories, but I'll manage. I just appreciate your support. It could have been much worse if you hadn't been there." Marcus's expression softened. "You know you can count on me, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's never easy to run into someone from the past, especially if the history was complicated." Amelia nodded with gratitude. "I was lucky to have a true friend by my side." The word friend hung in the air, and Marcus's eyes twinkled with an unasked question. Amelia did not miss the nuance, but she wasn't ready to define anything further, not yet. Instead of responding, she cleared her throat and returned to the philanthropic topic, while a wave of mixed emotions churned inside her. Friendship? Something deeper? She needed time to sort out what she felt. Across the city, Alexander Vance was consumed in his penthouse, ignoring the business emails piling up. In 3 days, he was supposed to fly with Gabrielle to St. Barthélemy, but the idea no longer excited him. Instead, he couldn't stop reliving the image of Amelia alongside Marcus Thorn. She seemed genuinely happy, and a pang of regret hit him like a punch to the stomach. Gabrielle paced the living room, giving instructions to staff on what outfits to pack. Occasionally, she tried to catch Alexander's attention. "What do you think of this bikini?" Or, "Should I wear the diamond set you gave me last month?" He responded listlessly, fueling Gabrielle's dissatisfaction. She sensed his mind wasn't on the trip. Finally, she dropped onto the sofa beside him, crossing her arms. "Alexander, you've been insufferable since we left the premiere. Is it because of Amelia? Are you jealous? Or what?" His instinctive reaction was to deny it. "I'm not jealous," he said stiffly. But even as he spoke, an inner voice told him otherwise. He felt envy, yes, of Marcus's success, but even more so of the genuine connection he seemed to have with Amelia. "I don't like how the press is distorting everything," he added. Gabrielle scoffed. "Let them talk. We have a flight to paradise. Focus on that." She got up dramatically, shaking her mane of hair. "I'm going to Fifth Avenue for some last-minute things. Coming?" Alexander shook his head, pretending to be busy. "I have pending calls." Disappointed but determined not to waste the day, Gabrielle left. Alexander, alone, reflected on the irony. He had ended his marriage seeking a freer, more glamorous life, and now he felt empty, desiring something deeper. He remembered how Amelia believed in him when no one else did, how they shared late-night conversations, dreaming of using their wealth to do good. With Gabrielle, those topics only came up if they helped her public image. Impulsively, he picked up his phone and searched for a contact he hadn't used since the divorce. Clara Johnson, a mutual friend who had remained close to Amelia after the breakup. Clara was known for her frank advice. Perhaps what he needed was a dose of truth. He hesitated, then wrote a quick message. "Hi, Clara. It's Alexander. I know it's been a while. Can we talk?" Seconds turned into minutes. Just as he assumed she would ignore him, a reply appeared. "This is unexpected. Are you okay?" Alexander exhaled, with a mixture of relief and anxiety. He typed, "To be honest, not really. I need perspective." The reply was brief, direct, very Clara. "Meet me at Hudson Cafe, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Alexander put his phone aside, feeling something release in his chest. Clara didn't beat around the bush. If he sought clarity, she would give it to him, whether he liked it or not. He looked out his bedroom window, towards the Manhattan skyline that once filled him with enthusiasm. Now, every gleaming building seemed to mock him. Wealth and success had never seemed so empty. And as the hours passed, a single truth pressed on him. Perhaps he had lost something invaluable, and it might be too late to get it back. Seeking forgiveness and a new beginning. The next afternoon, Alexander arrived at Hudson Cafe, a cozy spot by the river, filled with young professionals on their lunch break. He located Clara Johnson in a booth by the window, sipping a latte. She was scanning a magazine, her wavy brown hair framing a face marked by skepticism. Upon seeing Alexander, her lips tightened into a firm line, neither a smile nor a frown, but rather a calculated neutrality. Alexander slid into the seat opposite her. The persistent aroma of espresso grounded him slightly, but his nerves were still frayed. Clara put the magazine aside and crossed her arms. "You said you needed perspective," she began with her usual directness. "So talk, walk or run, but talk." He rubbed his temples, searching for the right words. "I ran into Amelia last night, at the premiere. She was with Marcus Thorne," he explained, detailing the whirlwind of tension, the forced conversation, and the pang of unexpected jealousy that had shaken him. Clara raised an eyebrow. "You're the one who ended the marriage, remember? If she's moved on, she has every right to." Alexander winced. "I know. It's not that I don't want her to be happy, I do. But seeing her with him made me realize that maybe I made a mistake. I never truly valued what Amelia and I had." Clara's gaze sharpened. "Let me guess, now that you see her with a man who is arguably more successful and committed to causes than you, your ego is bruised." The observation was like a slap. Alexander's shoulders slumped. "I guess so," he admitted softly. "I hate feeling overshadowed, but it's more than that. Amelia wasn't a trophy I couldn't keep. She was authentic. We shared something deep, and I can't help but wonder if I gave up too soon." Clara let out a brief, dry laugh. "That sounds like a recipe for disaster." She lowered her tone a bit and continued. "Look, Alexander, you know that after the divorce, I stood by Amelia because I saw her devastated. She deserved something better. And you were too lost in your new millionaire life to realize the damage you caused. Are you asking if you should try to win her back?" Alexander's throat tightened. "Is that even possible?" "She's with Marcus Thorne. They seem like a very well-balanced couple. I don't want to ruin their happiness. Clara took a slow sip of her coffee, her expression softening slightly. Amelia is a grown woman. She's not looking for more heartbreak. And I know Marcus respects her. If you want to try to reconnect, you'd better be ready for her to reject you. She might choose Marcus. A pang of fear pierced Alexander's chest. So you think I should just let it go? I think you need to figure out what you truly want, and if you're willing to do the work necessary to regain her trust, if that's even still on the table. She leaned slightly towards him. But let's be clear, she owes you nothing. If you expect an easy reconciliation, forget it. And if all this is just about your bruised ego, do us all a favor and let her be happy. Alexander inhaled deeply, trembling. That's why I asked you for perspective, he thought. You're right. It's not just ego. I regret letting success overshadow what really mattered, but I don't want to be the villain in her story anymore. Clara looked at him with unusual sympathy. Then talk to her. Ask for forgiveness, without expectations. If there's any chance of a new chapter, start with honesty. They talked for a while longer, dissecting the complexity of his emotions. Before he left, Clara offered a final warning. Don't forget that Marcus isn't a fleeting fling. He's a powerful man who can give Amelia everything she once dreamed of with you, but without the drama. The words weighed on Alexander's heart, but they also clarified his resolve. After Clara left, he sat staring at the swirling foam in his untouched coffee. Then he wrote a message to his assistant, canceling the trip to Saint Barthélemy with Gabrielle. If he was going to face the emotional chaos within himself, he had to stop escaping to tropical paradises. He knew Gabrielle would react with fury, or worse, with manipulation. He would have to handle that too. But first, he needed to find a genuine way to talk to Amelia. Perhaps invite her for coffee, or better yet, to a neutral, safe place where they could talk alone. He had no illusions. A single conversation wouldn't fix everything. But it could be the first step towards redemption, or a definitive closure. As he left the cafe, a faint clarity accompanied him. The city's bustle no longer felt so suffocating, but like a symphony of possibilities. He realized that true success wasn't about having the best table at the premiere or the most ostentatious penthouse, but about building authentic connections, living with integrity, and perhaps finding a love that would survive the fleeting glitter of wealth. A coffee, a park, a fragile hope. Alexander Vance looked at his phone, his heart pounding. The message he had just written left him exposed, vulnerable. Amelia, it's Alexander. Can we grab coffee? Just to talk. He hesitated, his finger suspended over the send button. Memories of their last encounter at the premiere flooded him. Amelia, radiant and confident, with Marcus Thorne by her side. A pang of jealousy and regret twisted inside him. But if he truly wanted to close that chapter, or rewrite it, he needed to take that step. Finally, Alexander pressed send. To his surprise, Amelia's reply came minutes later. When and where? Relief mixed with nerves. He proposed meeting the next day at Central Park. She accepted, succinctly and serenely, revealing nothing about her emotions. That night, Alexander barely slept, torn between hope and fear. The next afternoon, sunlight illuminated Central Park. Families picnicked on the grass. Joggers circled the pond. Alexander chose a bench near the fountain, where the water rose in graceful arcs. He clutched a latte he could barely taste, scanning the area. Soon he saw her approaching. Amelia wore a simple blouse and jeans, radiating a discreet elegance. "Thanks for coming," he said softly when she arrived. Amelia sat on the bench, leaving a space between them. "I'm curious why you wanted to see me," she replied, her voice firm. Alexander inhaled deeply. He thought of all the unspoken regrets that had accumulated in the month since their divorce. "I needed to apologize, truly," he began. "I hurt you in ways I can't undo. I let success consume me, and I took our relationship for granted." Amelia's gaze drifted to the fountain. "I appreciate that," she said, running her fingers along the rim of her cup, "but an apology doesn't erase everything." He nodded. "I know. I don't expect you to forget what happened, or to give me another chance. I can't keep pretending that I'm okay with how things ended. Seeing you at the premiere, it shook me." Silence settled between them, broken only by the murmur of the water. Amelia observed his face. She remembered when they were newly married, full of shared dreams. But those dreams had dissolved under the weight of Alexander's ambition. "I'm not the same person anymore," she said softly. "I've built a new life. I work with foundations, and, well, I'm with Marcus." A flicker of jealousy crossed Alexander's face, but he managed a faint smile. "He seems like a good man. I just want you to be happy. Truly." Amelia's eyes narrowed, unsure whether to believe him. "And why now?" Alexander exhaled, grappling with the truth. "Because I broke up with Gabrielle. I woke up one day and realized I had surrounded myself with superficialities. I felt alone in a crowd. It took me a long time to see that I was chasing something empty." He looked away, his voice laden with emotion. "But seeing you, so complete, so committed to your causes, it reminded me how much I strayed from the person I wanted to be." A storm of emotion stirred in Amelia's chest. Compassion, weariness, and a grief that still hadn't fully healed. She cleared her throat. "Alexander, I'm glad you're becoming aware of these things, but that doesn't change the past. We can't pretend we didn't go through a painful divorce." He swallowed with difficulty. "I'm not asking you to. I just wanted to own my mistakes, and for you to know that I admire what you've become. If there's any way I can support your charitable work, I'd like to, even if we never get back together." His voice trembled slightly. "Thank you. That means more than you can imagine." For a moment they were silent, remembering better days, before the betrayal, before the break. A breeze rustled the leaves above their heads, and distant laughter resonated from the other side of the park. Finally, Amelia spoke. "I accept your apology, but I'm moving forward, Alexander, with or without Marcus. I learned to stand on my own." "I hope you also find your own path," Amelia said softly. He nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "That's all I wanted. A chance to make amends, even if only with words." They stood up from this bench, their coffee still untouched. She gave him a small, faint, nostalgic smile. "Take care." Alexander raised his hand in a hesitant gesture, then turned and walked away. Amelia watched him disappear into the crowd, unsure whether to feel relieved or melancholic. The fountain water continued its rhythmic dance, sparkling under the sun. Amelia exhaled, her heart lighter than before. Perhaps, at last, they had found the closure they so desperately needed. And perhaps now she was truly free to embrace her future, whatever destiny held. This is such a raw and honest moment of healing. Do you think Amelia and Alexander can truly move on from their past? Or will the past always linger? Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. A new horizon, purpose and connection. Weeks passed, and the dramatic encounter at the premiere faded from public conversation. Amelia Hayes immersed herself in her work at the NGO, organizing a high-profile charity gala that promised to raise significant funds for youth education. Every day she woke up more certain of who she was. She was no longer Alexander Vance's ex-wife, but a competent and respected organizer in the philanthropic world. She rarely thought about the meeting in Central Park, though the conversation with Alexander lingered in her memory. His apology had given her something she didn't know she needed. Closure. It was no longer a shadow of guilt or pain. For the first time, she felt truly free to explore new possibilities without emotional baggage. Marcus Thorne's presence in her life also intensified. They continued collaborating on various projects, and each interaction revealed more of his sincere character. Yes, he was wealthy, but he was also principled and empathetic. Whenever Amelia felt overwhelmed by the logistical details of the event, he was there, with practical advice, a word of encouragement, or even a comforting hand on her shoulder. Little by little, the line between professional and personal began to blur. The day of the gala arrived. It was held in the ballroom of a historic hotel, gleaming and packed with philanthropists, celebrities, and key influencers. Amelia wore a midnight blue gown, her hair pulled back in an elegant loose bun. She moved among the guests with the confidence of someone who mastered every detail: the silent auction, the keynote speakers, the impeccable dinner service. On stage, she introduced Marcus for a speech on the impact of strategic donations. His words resonated deeply with the attendees, highlighting how wealth can be a powerful tool for social good. At the end of the program, Marcus found Amelia among the guests and led her to a quieter corner, by tall windows overlooking the illuminated city. "You've done an extraordinary job," he said warmly. "We exceeded our fundraising goal." She exhaled, still with adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'm relieved and happy. Thank you for your support. Without your hotel group sponsorship, we wouldn't have reached these figures." Marcus smiled, taking a step closer. "There's something I've wanted to ask you. When all this settles down, can I invite you to dinner? A real dinner. Not a quick meal between meetings, nor anything work-related." His hazel eyes shone with sincerity. Amelia felt the heat rise to her cheeks. After the divorce, she had sworn off romance for a while, afraid to trust again. But Marcus wasn't Alexander. He was there, in front of her, with genuine kindness, not just charm. She found herself nodding. "I'd love to." The answer was sealed with a shared laugh, the air charged with promise. A tickle of excitement took hold in her chest. Perhaps, at last, she was ready for something more than professional camaraderie. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Alexander Vance stood before a modest community center. He had made a significant, anonymous donation to fund computers and science kits for low-income children. A cause that, at one time, he and Amelia dreamed of supporting together. Now, he carried it forward, alone. Seeing the children enthusiastically explore the new facilities brought a rare, honest smile to his face. He thought of Amelia, wondering if she would ever find out. Part of him hoped she would. Not for recognition, but for the silent understanding that he was trying to be the man he always should have been. That night, returning to his penthouse, the place was calm. No parties, no superficial gatherings. He prepared a simple dinner, reflecting on how much his priorities had changed. Gabrielle Stone was gone. She had moved on to the next scene of luxury, presumably, and it was for the best. Alexander understood that being alone wasn't so bad if he managed to fill that void with purpose, whether through volunteering, therapy, or authentic friendships. A month after the gala, Amelia and Marcus dined at an intimate table in a little-known French bistro. Unlike the galas, there were no paparazzi lurking, no opulent decorations, just soft light and excellent cuisine. Between laughs and shared stories, they discovered how aligned they were, from values on philanthropy to personal passions like traveling or reading. Upon leaving the restaurant, they walked hand in hand. Amelia felt a lightness flood her heart. She looked up at the moonlit sky, remembering the heartbreak she once thought insurmountable. Perhaps life could indeed begin anew after the most devastating disappointments. There, under the soft glow of the city lights, she understood that she was no longer a prisoner of the past. She had found a new horizon, one shaped by mutual respect, renewed purpose, and the exciting possibility that, this time, love could last. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of love, betrayal, and rediscovery of purpose. Amelia's story reminds us that a broken heart can be the beginning of a profound transformation, that true wealth is not measured in luxurious dinners or gleaming possessions, but in the strength of our bonds and the sincerity of our intentions. Even when the past unexpectedly bursts into the present, as it happened in that fateful restaurant, we have the power to shape our destiny and start anew. If Amelia, Alexander, and Marcus's story captivated you, don't forget to like this video to show your support, share it with your friends who love moving dramas, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the depths of love, ambition, and redemption. Your participation keeps this channel alive. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next installment of Irresistible Drama.